let the person know, like a documentary subject, like, hey, I've been through this as well, and this is why I'm interested in telling your story.
Today we're talking with Dina Fiasconaro, a Baltimore filmmaker, professor at Stevenson University, and 2025 Ruby's Artist Grant recipient. Dina works across narrative film, documentary, and video installation, telling stories about women, mental health, and recovery. She's also the founder of the Baltimore Women's Media Alliance, and her films have screened everywhere from festivals to the Baltimore Museum of Art. Lately, she's been rethinking what a sustainable, humane filmmaking life even looks like, pushing back against grind culture, bringing her family into her creative world, and making deeply personal work rooted in her own long-term recovery. Dina,
Get in the
welcome
van.
to the, yeah,
Thank you. Thanks for having me in the van. It's really
yeah.
exciting. I feel special.
This is the proverbial sprinter van, like the crew van,
Yes, love
not
That's
the
it.
liquor
right.
store like we're robbing it van.
We're at the coffee shop fueling
Yeah,
up before or after the shoot.
yeah. Dina, so you have your hands in a lot of different creative worlds, and I'm curious to know, maybe just to get us started here, how do you define yourself as a filmmaker, artist?
Yeah, it's hard because when I look at my body of work, it's sort of all over the place in terms of format. Um, but let's say in writing my bio, I currently call myself a socially engaged filmmaker and video installation artist,
Hmm.
because that's pretty much where my work has evolved to at this point in my career. But I have worked in all the formats: documentary, narrative, short and long form, experimental, video installation. So I had a really hard time sitting down and writing a director's statement at first because I was like, what's the common thread? Um, and I was able to discern that the common thread in my work is this exploration of resilience,
Hmm.
and what happens to people sort of after a traumatic moment in a story or in their lives. And I'm really inspired by that sort of aftermath, of resiliency and kind of like rising and surviving in the face of adversity. So, yeah, that's what my work is about now.
Hmm.
And it's been, in your most recent thing, so you've done all this film work, but the Rubies Award. Tell us a little bit about that for anyone that doesn't know about that grant and that opportunity.
Sure. So this is a yearly Baltimore City Artist Grant, and you become part of a cohort, and it's across all different art formats, from, writing to performance to filmmaking. So I was super excited to get into this year's cohort for a new video installation that I'm working on.
Which you're talking about that theme that's going through all your work. How does that theme play into this new installation?
Yeah, so I made an installation a couple of years ago about recovery and substance use disorder. And this is a new video installation in that same vein. Um, and it's really to kind of humanize addicts, and help audiences empathize with substance use disorder and recovery. So very briefly, I can explain what it's about.
Please.
It's a 4-channel video installation with a performance component. And it takes a viral overdose video. It recreates a viral overdose video, to explore these ideas of like control and loss of one's narrative, and then eventually moving to sort of reclaim your story. So yeah.
Um,
What draws you to that theme?
Yeah, so, this is based on my personal experience. In this coming fall, I'll have 20 years in recovery.
Wow.
And it's
Wow.
taking me basically until a few years ago to really feel comfortable telling recovery-based stories. For sort of obvious reasons, like the stigma associated with it, particularly because I'm a university professor and I feel like, I have this like leadership role and this role that entails like a lot of integrity and it's somewhat public facing. And so I've always really been worried about, kind of like outing myself in this
Mm,
environment. But it's been so long, and it's a topic that I care so much about, that I have just like kind of slowly worked my way to being okay, telling these stories. And so far, I haven't even told my own story. Obviously, I'm putting bits and pieces of myself into my work always,
sure.
but these are similar stories that resonate with me. And I love being able to kind of like tell these authentic, like lived experience stories and sort of like use my art and combine it with activism because there always is some form of activist part now that I play,
Hmm.
in addition to just like making the work.
I'm I'm curious. One of the things I find interesting, especially with documentary work, that uh, is like almost like a test of psychology, is kind of how do you handle approaching sensitive subjects and tackling kind of sensitive issues, and I feel like everybody kind of does it a little bit different. But so from your standpoint, I mean, how do you handle that? I mean, whether it's with your art or film, like how do you approach handling sensitive subject matter, and like what's going through your brain when you are, either trying to convince somebody to be on camera or trying to tell someone's story.
Yeah, it's so tricky, right?
Right.
I try to, again, like approach it from a lived experience perspective. Like it just immediately let the person know, like a documentary subject, like, hey, I've been through this as well, and this is why I'm interested in telling your story. And then really trying to be as collaborative as possible, like really bringing them into the process of making the work, like, and sort of checking in with them along like kind of every step of the way, right? Like, are these interview questions okay before I just like turn the camera on
Right.
and start asking you a whole bunch of stuff, and even like something that I'm thinking about even more now that I haven't quite implemented into my past work, but that I plan on implementing into this new project is what kind of aftercare can be available for a person, right? Like after we've been through this process, whether that means like making sure that they have like therapeutic support or like a family circle, ways to decompress, say, after you walk into an exhibition that's about this really like heavy, sort of triggering subject matter. So yeah, it's something that I'm thinking about a lot. And I really think it just
Hmm.
comes down to like being really honest with the people that you're collaborating with and like, doing your research, being open, being collaborative and communicative with them.
Yeah, I mean that afterthought, so much of, I think there's a lot of effort as a filmmaker put in ahead of time to line up and convince isn't the right word, but to get somebody to trust you enough to tell their story before
Hmm.
you even do the work. And then you do the work and a lot of your attention shifts to, all right, now I've got to kind of piece it together, or I've got to make it, right? And then, but for them, it's like they just, in a lot of ways, relived very traumatic parts of their journey. And
Yeah.
then you can't just walk away and abandon either. So thinking through that back end is such a good thing, I think, for a lot of filmmakers to make sure that they're mindful of.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And like I said, it's not something that I think I've been super thorough about and
Hmm.
seen all the way through in my previous projects, but it's definitely like something that I'm going to do moving forward.
Yeah.
Well, so currently on Amazon Prime, people can see your film. It's a documentary from a few years back, very personal film. And just by coincidence, this is the second podcast in a row that we've done a pregnancy film story.
Yes, that's right.
And I don't know if that's a sign that Dave and I need to have more kids or not, but maybe. I
That
don't.
ship has sailed
Good
for me,
luck.
unfortunately.
Yeah, it sailed for me too. But I've always wanted a lot of kids. Anyways, so you have this film on Amazon Prime. It's called Moms in Meds. Maybe you could just give the premise of this film, and then we can dig a little bit more deeper into the topics that Dave was bringing up about sensitivity, because this is a super sensitive topic in
Yeah.
film, and like under talked about thing, just like perimenopause or menopause. Like it's like not talked
Oh
about
my gosh,
enough.
that is my world right now, let me
Yeah.
tell you. We could do a whole other podcast on that.
My wife's just started a whole group on Facebook for menopausal women, and so I'm
Okay,
learning.
I need to find her.
Yeah, I'll hook you up with her name.
Thank you.
Dave's wife Ashleen is in the group, and so maybe if you could tell our listeners just a little bit about that film, and I guess you're thinking about making it.
Sure. So before I outed myself as somebody in recovery, I outed myself as somebody with mental health struggles. And so the Moms in Meds is a feature documentary that's about women who either become pregnant or want to become pregnant, but are taking psychotropic medication for
Mm.
mental illness. And the different avenues that you have and decisions that you need to make in terms of like, can I stay on something, but maybe lowest safe dose? Or am I taking something that would absolutely be harmful to a growing baby? And then, like, what are the ramifications going to be for me getting off of that medication? And so, I wanted to tell that story from different perspectives. I've pretty much been on every antidepressant that's out there, mood stabilizers, sleeping pills.
He prescribed me Xanax.
I went with so much medication
I stopped taking Klonopin.
I can't take medication right now.
with the idea that they weren't going to give me anything. That was where I had to face the fact of, you might have to go through this depression alone.
I had just gotten pregnant, or no, it was pre getting pregnant, but my pregnancy was very planned because I was taking some medication that I knew I wouldn't be able to for anxiety. And so I was like, well, I'm about to go through this experience. And I realized in talking to doctors and trying to do some research that there wasn't a lot of information out there, or that it was conflicting, or like what was happening to me was like my psychiatrist, I'd ask them a question and they'd say, well, you need to go talk to your OBGYN. So then
Mhm.
I'd bring the question to my OBGYN and they were like, we're not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Like you need to go back and talk to your psychiatrist. And I just kept on getting like
Hmm.
passed around my doctors. And it was like a really confusing time in terms of figuring out what to do. And I realized that I wasn't the only woman, probably going through that experience at the time. So I decided to make a documentary about it. And I was like, before I had any of the other subjects, I was like, well, I have myself. I'm going through this lived experience. So I very reluctantly made myself one of one of the subjects of the film. And then I was able to find other women who were making other decisions. So, like, I personally decided to get off of everything just because I knew that because of my anxiety, if I had stayed on my medication, but there was still a risk, I probably would have just been so worried the whole time. But I was able to find other stories and other experiences of like, women that stayed on lowest effective dose and stuff like that. And then, of course, like balancing the story out with experts like doctors working in the field. So.
Yeah.
Interesting.
How did you find those other women?
So funny enough, I put a casting call out just
Mhm.
as though I were
Yeah.
casting like a narrative film. I put it out on Dragonuk, which is like, a local casting site. And, I specified like it's a documentary. So I found one woman that way. Another woman was my director of photography's sister.
Hmm.
So somewhat coincidentally, she was going through a similar experience at the same time.
Yeah.
And then the third main person, which I'm pretty sure violates HIPAA, my therapist at the time was also seeing this other woman, and she was like, "Let me connect you with her." She probably was not supposed to do that.
I think it's
Um,
okay if they ask permission, and
okay, yeah.
if she
Yeah.
doesn't give you
Hopefully,
her information, then it's
I hope
probably
so. I
fine.
hope so.
Yeah.
So
I'm no,
that's
I'm not a
sort of
lawyer.
um, that's how I rounded out like the three or four of us basically who are featured in the film.
No, that's great.
How did I'm curious how you handled, you're telling your story, which is vulnerable enough, and you're trying to make some big decisions for yourself throughout that process. But then you're, telling other women's journeys and their decision-making process. And just in the nature of being human beings, right? We are all constantly reflecting upon our choices and weighing them against how other people have, like, did that, come to play at all for you in terms of, as you're making your own choices for things, did you feel, I'm just curious, like, did you feel like that pull from them? They're making choices for them, but like, did it play a part in kind of your ultimate choice as well? Like, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't think I was necessarily influenced by their decision in
Right.
terms of making my own, but what I did want to be careful about was just showing the spectrum of
Sure.
decisions and trying to be as non-judgmental as possible,
Right.
right? Because
Yeah.
it is a woman's individual choice of what she wants to do with her
For sure.
body,
Yeah.
So, and really making like the best informed decision for yourself, of course, like in conversation with medical experts.
And was that the first film that you had kind of told your story? Like, you hadn't done that technique before. You haven't told your story before. How did that
No.
feel to you? Like, as you were like, you record it, you do it, and then at some point you go into the edit bay and you have to, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
I listen
triggered
to
even when
myself over and over again.
I'm triggered even watching my own podcast. Like, I will watch this and be like, why did I? So I'm just
Totally.
curious from your standpoint, like how that process was for you.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I very reluctantly put myself in it.
Yeah.
Like, I hate listening to my voice. Like, I hate seeing myself on camera. This is why I'm always like, so every once in a while, my students will ask me to act in one of their projects, and I'm like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like, I'm strictly a behind the camera person. Um, so it was definitely weird, and I don't know. I guess I tried not to just also make it all about me. Um, and yeah, and this goes back to kind of like balancing the stories. Like my
Right.
perspective was like a very specific perspective. But then I tried to kind of like balance it out with other decision-making processes.
Yeah.
I think like it's very natural. I think all filmmakers who make a film that they're a big part of, almost across the board, always say, I didn't want to make it about me. But I will say there's a lot of courage in doing it. And there's a lot of, I mean, nobody, like, if we talk about observational filmmaking or verite filmmaking, you have the best characters you have full access to, right? And what a better way to tell a story than something that you're going through. And I think too, like, we ask people all the time to put themselves in very vulnerable situations. And I think it's very admirable when filmmakers are willing to do it themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a learning process, and like, I think I definitely grew over the course of making the film. Like at the end, I say something, if I remember correctly, because it's been a while since I watched it, about having proven to myself that like I didn't need to define myself by my anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
and that I could live like a happy, productive life, again, like without letting it kind of define or control me. And I think I came into the filmmaking process with a different perspective. Like I used to very much identify as like, the messed up girl, like the anxious girl, like the girl that did drugs and the girl that was dark and depressed all the time. I feel like maybe that was a bridge like into this kind of like new, I don't want to say new persona because I've always been the same person, but just maybe a different outlook on like being a person living with anxiety and basically just like not letting it take me down.
Mm.
So yeah, so in that regard, I guess I'm glad I did put myself in the films.
Yeah, it kind of, it's a very proactive thing to do. It's a very like you're taking control of your own story and putting it out there, and you're doing something that is, you're creating art, and you're fighting that vulnerability. And I think it's a massive growth opportunity for so many filmmakers. So I think it's really cool. One thing that
Yeah.
is interesting, and I just want to note, is that you put out a casting call for this,
Yeah.
because I think that's really smart for a lot of reasons. I also think that most people don't do that, or at least they do for reality TV shows, right? Or they do for a lot of TV programs or docuseries programs in some cases. But a lot of like the homegrown journalistic style folks that I guess we are talk to generally find people through various means and beat reporting or going to groups or whatever. And I think that's such an underutilized thing. And I think we especially for filmmaking, I think we should be thinking of it as casting, even though I
Right.
hate calling people subjects. I don't have a better word. At some point I was
Yeah, I know. I
I wanted
know.
to use the word guest, but I need something that does, like when I'm describing to crew or something, like I need people to know this is the on-camera person. But we are making movies, and I do think that casting is such an apt term and an underutilized thing to do. It also sets a really great, strong expectation up front for the person on camera, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because like, I don't know what your experience is, Dina, but when we learn of somebody's story and we're trying to build trust and tell their story, um, I don't know if you can find somebody that has seen a casting call and wants to do it. It automatically vets them as somebody's. It's a hot lead, as they say in business.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, Vicky, who is that person in my film who answered the call, is an actress. So she
Oh
was
wow,
just kind of reading through it and like I identified with it, right? Because she was having that lived experience. You're
yeah.
also making me remember that it was difficult to find even for women to be in the film because it's a topic that's not talked about so much, right? So
Right.
like I was able to find the doctors because the doctors are like public facing, kind of doing the research and talking about all of that.
Yeah.
But the, women are like home alone with nobody to talk to. Like I said, my experience just being shuffled around to doctors. And like now I know that there is a support group in town, like that was specifically about those themes and those issues. But prior to
Mm.
the film, there was like nothing. So it's like, well, I didn't know how else to find other women going through the same experience. So yes, it was definitely unconventional, but I think it worked considering the subject matter.
And it was a great opportunity where you blended your narrative background with documentary.
Hmm.
How other have you had anything else like that occur? Like ways you've found great overlap between scripting and working with actors versus documentary?
You've added special effects into just kidding, into your documentary.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I think when I think about my body of work, I think even the most narrative work still has a blending in some way. So, for instance, like I have this longer term project, which is a feature-length narrative film that I've been trying to get off the ground for years, and it's so slow going. And I wrote that script, but it's based on a true story. And I received a small grant a few years ago to fly out to Nebraska, which is where the story was set, and to meet the real people that the story had actually happened to, and bring them in a collaborative way to like the storytelling aspect of it, right? So I basically like interviewed them to get more details and to get more like kind of nuanced aspects of the story from them, so that the script could be as authentic as it could possibly be. And I also plan on, if and when I'm ever able to make this dang thing, bringing them on board, like making sure that they get paid and also making sure that they have some collaborative hand in what I'm making, because it's such a weird thing, right? To like trust somebody. I literally just wrote to them on Facebook and was like, "Hey, I read this story about you and it's really fascinating to me for X, Y, and Z reasons." And they were, they told me at first they were just like, we were like, who the heck were you?
Yeah.
But something clicked in the way that I was talking about the story and expressing that I wanted to tell their story from their point of view, and whatnot. So that's been like a cool collaboration and like a crossover. And then, for instance, also like my last video installation was also based on somebody else's true story and an experience that a father had had with his daughter in recovery, and the daughter's friend. So I ended up fictionalizing that and also experimentalizing that the story into like a 3-channel video installation.
That is so
So
cool.
That's cool.
yeah, I think that there are always these like layers of true stories or real people that I'm working in.
How do you balance boundaries with fictionalizing true stories, right? So you said
Yeah.
that you collaborate with them, and do you share a final script with them and allow them to sign off on it? Or like, how do you kind of handle that?
Yeah, it's a tough balance, right? Because when I am fictionalizing, like ultimately, I have the right to kind of fictionalize in whatever way I want to. And then, this also gets into like having life story rights and like whether or not you need those. And of course, like my entertainment lawyer is like, you definitely need them. Um, but I haven't paid for them yet because like we're not that far into like development or even pre-production to I'm like,
Yeah,
I need money first and then I
Right.
can pay for the life story rights. So we're working on this like other kind of
yeah.
contract and this sort of like um trust with one another. So
Mm.
um I don't know, sorry, I lost my train of
No, no, no. That
thought.
No, that
answers
was
my
perfect. Yeah.
question. Dave, did you have a question?
Well, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about grind culture. I wasn't a part of the but I'm endlessly fascinated by that, and not to switch topics and stuff, but that's where my
No,
mind's
that's
been
fine.
dragging along a little bit. So I'm curious, kind of what you guys had talked about previously, and what your viewpoint is, because I've got my own thoughts and the way I try to handle it with myself, but I'm curious where you stand.
Yeah, so this is a really good segue from talking about the feature film project that has just forever been on my plate. Um, I had been working so hard on it for so long, and I have like a recognizable TV actor attached and like a whole bunch of support from like other grants and residencies and labs that I've done, and I'm like, nothing is enough. Like the money still isn't there. And I started to just get like, kind of depressed about it, but mostly just like exhausted.
Hmm.
And I just reached a point where I was like, why am I doing this to myself? And, kind of like stepped away from it a little bit and tried to reassess my career, sort of like, or my current career, like, I'm not really happy, working on this narrative feature. I love filmmaking. Like, what does make me happy? Um, and what else do I need to add to my life to bring some more balance and joy and like mental health and physical health
Right.
back into my life and also back into my practice?
Yeah.
And that was sort of the point where I made the transition into video installations,
Hmm.
not only because it was like just a fresh way of approaching filmmaking, and it has allowed me to think like non-linearly about stories.
Yeah.
Um, and it's been such a breath of fresh air, but also kind of making sure that I'm like eating well and
Right.
sleeping well and literally not just like grinding myself into
Yeah.
the ground trying to like raise a whole bunch of money for a feature film in a system that's like really, really broken, right? Like the independent feature narrative feature filmmaking system
Yeah.
is such a broken system. And I was just like, why am I doing this to myself right
Right.
now? So I pivoted a little bit, and I haven't completely given up on that project, but I have figured out, I think, a better way of just like existing as a filmmaker, but also just wanting to be a happy, healthy person, like for
Yeah.
myself and also for my family.
Yeah. I mean, I think like, especially in today's culture, we live at such a time. I mean, you see it if you're on social media, you see it constantly where it's like, make something happen for yourself, that grind, like keep working. And I understand the sentiment, and I get the value of, because sometimes you do kind of just need to, keep moving and whatever. But the big thing that I've kind of discovered about myself is I cannot keep pulling water from a rock, right? Like when I'm
Hmm.
tanked, the creativity that I get is the worst creativity out of me. And typically it's not the most interesting stuff. It requires a little bit of boredom and a really healthy mindset. And for me to get there, like I need bandwidth. I can't
Hmm.
run constantly and keep creating and forcing it. And so um, I think that's important for filmmakers to understand that continuously moving forward sometimes isn't the best way. Sometimes stopping and taking a step back, you might find a bigger leap is taken when you do pick that project back up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I wasn't doing anybody a favor by
Yeah.
just trying to push forward, and
Yeah.
it's not a natural state of being for me. Like I
Right.
mentioned many times being an anxious person, like my natural state is just like go go go, work work work, have my hands and like a whole bunch of different things with no downtime. But I had just really hit a wall, and literally I had hurt myself and I had to stop. So side note, I used to play roller derby,
Oh,
and I
cool.
still skate. I still skate at parks like ramps and bowls and stuff like that. And I had fallen and I tore my hamstring and needed to get
Oh man.
surgery over a summer. This was the summer when we were really gearing up to maybe make the feature. And instead I had to have surgery and then like
Ugh.
be in a leg brace for 6 weeks, like off of my leg. And so I was like literally forced to stop working. And at
Yeah.
that point, that's what I needed. Like I needed to get injured like so badly in order to stop the grind. But since then, that was like 2 summers ago. Since then, I've been able to like kind of stop grinding on my own.
Hmm.
And yeah, just take a healthier approach to it all.
How did you find that shift? I'm like I enjoy the grind, but I hit a wall like anyone else. I've hit walls, and I think that filmmaking. We were talking about the other day. Filmmaking is a really expensive art, but it's also a business,
Hmm.
and it's also requires a lot of people, and there's never enough money. And to make a name for yourself, you have to get ahead, but you're racing against a lot of other people who are also talented and getting ahead. It's like not really built with the artist in mind or with mental health in mind at all.
No, not at all. I
Um,
know.
and I'm always just curious, like, so with you, I mean, you are a professor, so you do have a source of income, you know. Dave and I own a production company, and we have to grind, but we do have we've grown. It's almost like there's seasons to it. Dave used the word seasons. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like if you start a business, there's a grind period, and then there's a autopilot period, and then there's maybe a decline, and then maybe you hit the grind button again. I mean, you know, what are your thoughts on how did first, just let me back up. How did you find some stability, mental stability in the last couple years? And let's just start there.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I surprised myself when I was like laid up and I was literally just like on my porch in a recliner, reading books. I very quickly realized it was so much easier than I thought it would be. Like you just have to give yourself permission and get to that point. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, this feels amazing. Like I've been missing this for so many years, right?
Yeah.
And like for me, I really I need a balance. Like that was an extreme, right? Like I was forced to not really do anything,
Yeah.
but then I was slowly able to like add some stuff back in and balance things out to have like sort of a more well-rounded like repertoire of things that I'm doing at
Yeah.
any given time. And like, yes, my school gives me a foundation of not having to worry about income, but also structure, right? So like during the semester, I'm mainly prioritizing my students and my work at Stevenson, unless, you know, I have to like run out and go scout a location, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. And then I will usually like compartmentalize and then take like my winter break and my summer break to like be in production or to like most actively be working on my projects. And again, stuff gets messy sometimes, but kind of like that structure creates almost like a natural balance for me.
Yeah.
um, but then there's also, you know, like taking care of my daughter and having a partner and making sure that like they are taking priority. Like definitely my daughter 100% of the time. My poor husband, like maybe sometimes. um, but but yeah, so really I think it's just been more about like kind of finding that balance because when it's too much to an extreme, that's when I get really anxious. So I'm constantly trying to keep myself like here instead of like there.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you can feel it because it's the thing that I've been trying to pay attention to myself to, and in order to recognize it when it's changing, when I'm going from like, you know, like I can sprint for so long, right? Like I can sprint for a while and it feels at one point it feels great, and then eventually I'm like, oh, I can do it a little bit longer, and then at some point you're like, I've got to stop sprinting.
Hmm.
And so I'm curious from your standpoint if you've learned to start recognizing it. Like for me, I can start feeling a drop off in my ability to come up, whether it's concepts for you know, client work, or whether it's kind of you know, seeing how the pieces fit together on a documentary puzzle. Like I can feel myself just not being able to connect the dots as sharply, and that's
Yeah.
usually and so the first step for me is to be able to just recognize it, like the way you can recognize, oh, I feel triggered by something. Like just recognize, like, oh, this isn't work that I typically would think is good. I might be starting to get a little burnt out here, and I need to pull back. Have you started doing that work, or I'm just curious?
Yeah, I think that definitely happens for me also. Like I start to lose clarity of decision making and I
Right.
start to be like, well, it could be this or it could be that or I don't know, it could be that thing. And I just
Yeah.
get lost in like the could be.
Yeah.
And I'm usually a person that has a very clear sense of like this is how I want it to be. But you know, since we've been talking so much about like mental health, like for me, when I see my mental health either start to dip or if I start to get like too panicky, that's usually a sign for me also that like, hey,
Mm,
you need to like slow down, shift gears, you know,
mm,
or something just to like get me out of that state.
yeah.
This is going to be a little random, but something that helped me is I read this book about like a little bit of the science behind what's it called? When you create something with your mind. This is like not actualizing, like meditation and
Manifesting.
manifesting. Yeah. I was reading this book about manifesting, and I've been a meditator for a long time, like on and off. And this one like got into the quantum verse.
I think I probably read that same book.
Oh, really? I'll have to
Do
look
you
it up
remember
and
what the
share it with you.
author's name is? It's like a doctor somebody, right?
Yeah, I'll have to.
I was
Amanda
trying to
shared it with me.
manifest the money for my future for a while.
Yeah,
And I gave
well,
up.
one, I'm starting to believe that it's real, and two is it's like gets into the quantum physics of things, and I'm like, there's like an entire celestial universe inside like that grain of pepper, and I don't know why, but that just calms me down.
Yeah. Yeah, that book was so interesting to me. And like I said, I quickly kind of dropped off in the practice of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I had never really known too much about it. I had another friend that was doing like crystals and manifestations at the time, and I was like, well, why not? Like, why not try? It's not gonna hurt me.
Yeah.
So, I like that though. I like, yeah, thinking
Well, you know, when you
about like
realize,
just, mhm.
yeah, like Dave's really into space. I like
Yeah.
space. I feel like when you kind of realize how small you are, it's like all these little things that we're rushing to do just kind of calm down a little bit.
It's the scale of it all, you know, like
Yeah,
I don't like to get overly wrapped up in my self-importance, and nor do you want to go the other way where you think you're just like nothing, right? Like
right.
you're just like insignificant and nothing matters. But it's in the universes and in the quantum realms that I feel like you find this kind of freeing aspect that's like, this is a little bit bigger than me, and I don't necessarily need to take everything so seriously. And feels like you can kind of take a breath and not worry quite as much.
And our next guest is Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Well, thanks for having me. I just want to add, not that you asked, that Hayden Planetarium.
I'm going to digress for like a half a second, because as you were talking, it like made me think, and he was talking, Neil deGrasse Tyson, stop me if you've heard this. And he was like, you know what I've been thinking about lately? He's like, inside your gut, right, is a bunch of like microbiomes and microbes and stuff. And there's more microbes in your gut than there are people who have ever lived, like in all of humanity. There's more in your gut right now than people who have ever lived. And he's like, so you stand around and you think you're in control, like you're in control of your actions and stuff. He's like, well,
Right.
you know what? He's like, go upset that microbiome and tell me how far away from a toilet you get. He's like, are you in control as
upset
much as
right
you think
now.
you are? And there's something that like, I was like, oh, I love that. I love that, because we just walk around thinking like, yeah,
So if
I'm
I
in it.
fart, is it like genocide?
Maybe, I don't know, man. You're just destroying a complete human population, you know.
I love this so much because I've always had stomach issues.
Yeah.
This is maybe digressing a little bit too, but like, and it's like, it's directly related to my anxiety. So I don't know. I really like maybe just shifting my thinking about it
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
So
You and me both, sister. Well, I have stomach issues is what I mean.
mm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Geez, I don't want to end there, but maybe I've got diarrhea. Now get out of the van.
Gotta go, guys.
That's right. All of us need to exit the van immediately.
Yeah, tuck and roll. So Dina, maybe just real quick, like what's your favorite class you're teaching right now? And I'm curious because I've always heard for so many for years, like, you know, students, well, of any category of college, they go to school and then they really learn on the job. And I'm curious to know, like, kind of what you're teaching students, you know, what you're telling students about the career of filmmaking, which, you know, part of what we're talking about is that it's difficult and that it's a grind and all this stuff. So how do you couch that to students when you're teaching the art? And then you're like, okay, now here's the reality.
Yeah. Oh, this is such a tough question. I was just listening to a podcast yesterday that was about, is film school worth it? And right, because yeah, you can just like not go to school and just go work. And like the guest had a couple of interesting points, which is that like forging a path on sets just by working, you gain the knowledge in a very piecemeal way. But what school does for you is it like creates a trajectory, right? So, and it scaffolds the skills and the techniques that you need to learn so that you get like the full kind of gamut and not just like, well, I'm PAing on this one set today and then not working for 2 weeks. Oh, and then I'm gonna help production design, so it's like scattered. And school isn't scattered in that way. And I also think it's really, this is a pretty common thing, but I truly believe this, that like students are not only just coming here, particularly for undergrad, to learn filmmaking, but to learn how to like collaborate with one another and how to communicate and how to be critical thinkers and how to be like responsible citizens of the world or, just even locally, which leads into your question about my favorite class. So I just gave the final today, and I taught a special topics class this semester that I was able to create from scratch, which was so fun. It was a social issue filmmaking course, which, is right up my alley.
Right there.
And so we were able to just like not only watch a bunch of social issue films, and talk about like the different ways to put them together and various social issue topics, but then we also learned, well, how do you like make a social issue film and how do you plan for social impact, right? Which is like a whole other part. Like making the film is not really enough. You also have to create the social impact campaign and then follow through on a lot of these like actionable items that are associated with your film.
Right.
So I really loved teaching that class. I made it as collaborative as I could. Like the students could they would tell me what they wanted to watch. And I was constantly like polling them and involving them in the like the collaborative decision-making process of like what we would learn every week. So that was super fun and very satisfying for me. And like, like, I'll see what they say in the student evaluations, but I personally feel like it went really well and it was very satisfying for me as somebody that like really cares about that kind of filmmaking and is actively involved in it. So
What did you learn from teaching it?
that's a good question. I actually learned that my students really care a lot about what's happening in the world right now, right? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like we have this
Great.
misconception because we see them like this on their phone sitting in class that maybe they're not paying attention, but they actually are paying attention. They're paying attention to what's happening in the world, and I think they were paying attention to me. They produced good work, so they must have been
Yeah.
absorbing something, even if they were like playing a game on their phone or like checking Instagram or whatever. Um, and it gave me a lot of faith for like the future generation
Yeah.
of filmmakers, but also of just human beings,
People.
right?
Yeah.
Like these 20 somethings going out into the world. And I feel like we don't give them enough credit. But they
Yeah,
really
so
they
true.
surprised me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, do you have anything else, Dave?
No.
Dina, do you have any final things that we didn't talk about that you're really dying to talk about?
No, I don't think so. I just really appreciate having this
Yeah.
conversation with you guys. It's so awesome. And it is reinvigorating for
It
me.
is. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's why we love doing it. We've gotten the chance to really talk to some amazing people that we never would have been able to because we have this little past. Both Dave and I were in the journalism world before we got into video production, and it was always like a pass to go talk to people, like a reason to.
Yeah.
So this has kind of been that for us a little bit. So thanks for
Yeah.
joining us.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you
And,
so much.
Now I guess it's time to get out of the van. So we all have to do a tuck and roll.
Yeah.
Do a George Michael.
Woo!
Awesome. Well, thanks, Dina.
All right, thank you.
The
Thank
best.
you.
Awesome.
Take care.
Oh, what was that? I don't know, but let's get out of here.